Okay, so this topic is about advanced machine learning topics. It's just an introduction to these topics, um, some of which is um, um, we've discussed a little bit, some of which is new, but it's definitely just like introducing you to what is it about, and hopefully that this will open up um, more advancement in the area. Um, so, first of all, why are we discussing advanced models? Why do we need more advanced models? We're going to discuss some of the limitations of the models that we've learned, such as decision trees, logistic regression, and uh, and then we're going to talk about how to um, help improve their performance uh, using options like ensembles and probably uh, which includes combining two or more of these, let's say, weaker models, and also introducing other models that are capable of handling complex world problems, such as in neural networks, uh, which are the basis for deep learning. What are the problems with um, simple models? So the first problem is overfitting and underfitting. So overfitting happens when the machine learning model um, learns only from the training data. Okay, so it does not generate general patterns that applies to any data. It only learns from the patterns of from the learning data. It can answer questions, or it can, for example, classify based on the training data only. Underfitting happens when the model is too simple and uh, its learning is very superficial. It's not learning underlining patterns of data. So first problems are overfitting and underfitting. Second problem is the problem of non-linearity and also the problem of high dimensional data. We've addressed this or we've highlighted this in some of the examples that we studied throughout the course. So, for instance, Vision Tree is an extremely useful, powerful model, but it's too simple to handle the relationship between features. Another example, logistic regression assumes that there is a linear relationship between attributes. And in this case, it won't work in some applications such as image processing and or language processing. A third problem is the problem of noise and data variability. So simple changes in the data would definitely confuse a simple model and requires a more robust model that can handle variability. So what is the idea of an ensemble? So first of all, the word ensemble means a collection, okay, a group. Okay, so ensemble methods have been introduced so that instead of relying on one weak model, so one single decision tree, an ensemble model would combine multiple models, which would produce a better or stronger model. And there are different ways to combine these models. So there are types of ensemble models, okay? So or methods. There are types of combining um, models. So the first type is bagging, or it's also called bootstrap aggregation. So this would mean that we will be training multiple models on different random subsets of the data, okay? And then we will be combining their prediction, okay? An excellent example for this is random forest. It's a um, very powerful uh, approach that would benefit from decision tree, and it's called conveniently called random forest because it generates multiple decision trees. So a random forest model would create or will train different decision trees, and then it will combine their results. Okay, so this is bagging, and this is training the same model on different subsets from the data, such as random forest. So how it works, so we'll randomly sample training data, okay, with replacement, meaning that when you so for instance, you have 100 instances. So you sample 25 instances and train a model, okay? So if we said without replacement, it means that it's the data set, the rest of the data set will be 75, and then we will sample another 25, the rest will be 50, and so forth. But because it's with replacement, it means that we will sample 25, okay, train the model, return the 25 to the data set, and sample another 25, which means that some of the instances can and will repeat um, uh, when we are training other models. Okay, and we are training these models independently. So we are not um, uh, there is no connection. These are independently trained. After that, we will be aggregating the outcome. So decision trees or random forest can work with regression and classification. So it can, for classification, so we use something called majority vote. So for if we are testing the ensemble, uh, we will look at all the decision trees classification results and then vote or use the output that the majority of the models um, selected. For regression, because it's a numerical value, we're going to use average. Okay, so we will average all the model's results, and the output would be their average. Okay. Um, Examples have been around for a while, so especially random forest. So this is like a cool snip showing how a random forest classifier, so it is actually a classification model. How does it work, or how can you import it, and how can you train it? Uh, so simply you need to try to define your random forest model, identify how many trees you want, the maximum depth of the tree, and also uh, whether to use bagging, which is sampling with replacement. And then after that, it becomes a model that you will fit and predict and find its accuracy. Second type of ensemble is boosting. Okay, and boosting, there are existing uh, boosting models out there. So we have XG boost, we have ADA boost, we have gradient boost, and boosting means that we will be training models sequentially, where each model will feed from the results of the previous model. Okay, so how it works? So we will train a weak model, a decision tree, a random forest, sorry, a decision tree, a logistic regression, so a weak model. And then we'll be identifying errors. So the output of each model we will be identifying the errors of, in this case, for instance, the classification errors. And based on that, we will be giving more weight to the wrongly classified instances. So this new weight or this extra weight, once it's fed to the new model, it's going to receive more attention from the new model. Hopefully, the new model will be updating the data and there will be an output. Sometimes you'll have a third or a fourth model that will also use the output of the previous weighted output of the previous model and then retrain, and then eventually you'll have an outcome. So this is an example. So this is a data set that consists of four instances. The true label, which is the correct classification for A, B, and D, are all true. And for C is false. So the weak model number one actually got all of them wrong. The weak model number two got A correct, but wrong in the rest. Weak model number three got A and B correct, but C and D false. And then the final prediction got A, B, C correct, and D is wrong. So this is how those take it. So again, these are existing um, uh, models that um, were already defined. You do not need to define the sequence of the models, but you can if you want. So for XGBoost as a classifier, you're also going to, if it's a tree-based models, you're going to decide on the max depth. You'll need to decide on sampling and also random state. And after that, it becomes a model that you train and fit and predict. The third approach to ensemble is stacking. So stacking means that you will be using different models, okay? So you will use it, you're going to use logistic regression, decision tree, neural networks, SVM, any kind of model that you wish to combine. Um, so for boosting, it's going to be a single model. So, um, um, uh, but for stacking, it's going to be a collection of different models. Okay. Now, what happens is that um, first of all, we will have uh, our models to make predictions on the training data. Okay. Now, these predictions will become new features. All right. So we will be adding these predictions as new features. And then we will have to train another model. So we'll have like a meta model, an independent model that will look at all the results from the models and figure out a combination that will produce the best output. Okay, so you have three models. Okay, so logistic regression, decision tree, and neural network, or decision tree and SVM. Okay, so you have these three models, and you train them, and each one of them will produce their results, and this will be added to your list of features. Then you will have three outputs from three different models, and then you will train a meta model that will automatically look into combinations. So, um, is it, do we get a better results if we combine logistic regression and decision tree alone? Or is it better if we combine logistic regression and neural network? Or do we have a better option combining all three together? So this is how stacking. So in stacking, you need to define your base models and your meta model. So the base models in this case, in this code example here, are decision trees and SVM. And your meta model is logistic regression. Okay. And then you are going to identify a stacking classifier where you identify what are your base models and what are your meta models, and also your cross how many folds, cross validation folds, and then you fit and train and evaluate your model. So this is a visual that shows the difference between bagging, boosting, and stacking. So bagging, as example, we said we have random forest. Boosting, we have um, XG boost, and we also have stacking, which mainly based on how you define your base models and your meta models. Now, ensembles improve traditional models. They boost their performance, and for the longest period, they became a huge hit. Um, but we also have some powerful problems that do not really work with or do not are not suitable for examples. And this leads us to neural networks. So neural networks were the basis of AI and were around actually before the introduction of all the simple models that we were discussing. So neural networks are we're here to try to simulate how the human brain works. Okay, so it starts from a perceptron. Okay, a perceptron, which is a neural network or a neuron, is the simplest form of a neural network, and it is basically inspired of how our brains are wired. Okay, so it takes inputs, applies weights, and then passes the sum of these weights into an activation function that would calculate certain output. This is simplest neuron that works. Okay, so if you notice the equation, you'll see that the output y will equal to um, f, where f is the activation function, and inside f, we're going to pass uh, W1 X1, where W1 is the weight that the neuron assigned to X1, W2 X2, and again, W2 is the weight, X2 is the variable or input, okay? And um, uh, these values or this sum will be added or together to pass to um, the activation function. Okay. Um, now, so having an activation function, this allows us to introduce non-linearity to our to the relationships between attributes. So we are passing the weights along with the inputs to a linear function that would change, sorry, a non-linear function, or it can be a linear function, but it also can be a non-linear function that changes or recognizes complex relationships between the variables. And there are um, many activation functions out there. So we have a uh, rectified linear unit, which simply calculates the max between 0 and the output of our weighted sum. There is also sigmoid, we have tanh, and we also have softmax. Okay, I'm not going to start this video, but it explains how neural networks work. I highly recommend that you have a look at it. I'll just move it. Okay. Now, a multi-layer perceptron or MLP is a type of artificial neural networks, but it consists of multiple layers of neurons. Okay, so it's not multiple neurons; it's multiple layers of neurons. So you'll have a single layer will consist of multiple neurons. Okay, and a second layer will have another multiple neurons and so forth. So these multiple neurons have the capability of learning complex patterns in data. This is the foundation of deep learning. And the reason that it's called deep learning um, because of the multiple layers that goes into it. And if you remember when we discussed um, the transparency of the models and the idea that the model that deep learning models are hard to explain, unlike simple models like decision tree, it's because of the complex layering system that MLPs consist of, or deep learning consists of. So MLPs is the foundation of deep learning, and you can use deep learning for various tasks like classification, regression, pattern recognition, image recognition, and etc. Okay, now so why do we want to move into the complex world of deep learning? So FP is multi-layered, but deep learning is is a construction that consists of thousands of layers. So MLP, which is a multi-layered perceptron construction, it is also still simple and still struggles when you have um, uh, large data sets that consist of millions of features. Okay, so so just imagine having multiple layers with lots of features, and this will be uh, a struggle for an NLP solution. It also has a problem with hierarchical feature extraction, and um, um, and and this is more about uh, if if features relations are hierarchical, so that there are, it's not simple one-to-one relationship. It's non-linear, yes. It's also not simple relationship, it's hierarchical. And um, this will also go into long-term dependencies when you have sequential data, which is more, it's also relevant to the hierarchical feature extraction part. So deep learning uses many hidden layers. Okay. And so MLP will have 3 layers, up to 5 layers, but deep learning will have many um, uh, layers. Okay. Um, and you can conclude that deep learning models are actually neural networks, but they are very complex, deep, layered neural networks. Why deep learning is powerful? Okay, so deep learning, unlike all the work that we've done with simple machine learning models and ensemble models, deep learning learns automatically from raw data. You do not need to identify, uh, do all the work of feature selection and it does most of the work for you, but it's also computationally expensive. Okay? It's extremely expensive on your computational resources. So how it works? So we have an input layer, again, consisting of multiple neurons. The input layer will receive the data. So, for example, in image processing, setting receiving a image of a cat, and we want to recognize whether it's the cat or not, okay, which is a classification problem. And then we will have multiple hidden layers. These will work on feature extraction, learning from the data that you've provided. Okay, so again, each layer will be applying the same approach that we discussed in neural networks. So it's going to apply weights, pass it to an activation function, transform an output, and then move it to the second layer that will do the same thing. Okay. Now, hidden layers will keep learning from from the data as it continues to move from one layer to another, applying weights, passing to activation function, uh, at, at, and it will be moving deeper and deeper into the next. And then the output layer will be providing us with our final prediction. So it will tell you that this is a dog or a cat, and it will also tell you the confidence. So deep learning, there are multiple types of deep learning out there. So we have ANN, artificial neural networks, convolutional neural networks, CNNs. We also have recurrent neural networks, RNNs, and we also have transformers, such as BERT and GPT, and these are the basis of um, uh, LLMs or large language models. This is another interesting video that will introduce you to what is the machine learning behind ChatGPT or LLM. I'm not going to run it, but I highly encourage you to look into it. Okay, now why use ensembles before deep learning? So yes, simple models are too simple, but there are use cases that where these simple models work perfectly. Okay. Ensembles introduce a more or a better um, approach, but they also have their own use cases, and also deep learning will have its own use cases. But the suggestion or the recommendation is usually to use examples before deep learning. So why? So first of all, deep learning is extremely powerful, but it's also extremely expensive. Okay. It needs large data and mostly it needs computational power. So if you don't have a large data set and an extremely large data set, then deep learning won't work for use cases. Okay. Ensemble methods would work on highly structured data like tabular data for finance, healthcare, and fraud detection. So that is already defined in terms of an attributes and instances format. So ensembles work. It's definitely a good option. So generally speaking, so XGBoost is known to perform better than deep learning if you have a smaller tabular data set. So this concludes our topic about advanced machine learning models. Um, uh, I hope it's clear. Thank you very much, and see you.